Hey everybody, my name's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour, and I want to do two things in this little video. One, I want to give you a very abbreviated version of the story of my spiritual deconstruction. How I went from being raised in a Christian home and being a Christian as a young person to having my faith fall apart completely in adulthood, and then what happened after that. So I would super appreciate it if you would hang with me at least till the end of that part of the video, because the story has a lot of ups and downs, and where it lands is important to making sense of the whole story in general. Second thing I want to do is just talk about this concept of a testimony in general, the story that people tell about how they came to faith, or more recently, the story that people are telling about how they come away from faith. A lot of prominent people in the last year or so have come out and made videos or podcasts to say, I used to be a Christian, but now I'm not, and here's why. And I think it's worth processing that through a little bit together as well. The quick version of my spiritual deconstruction. My parents were awesome. Dad's a pastor. Mom and dad raised me around theology, philosophy, history, art. We did thought for fun growing up. We talked about books and movies and music and story, and I loved it. It was a blast to process all of this through, and in that context, the basics of the Christian gospel made sense, and I signed up for that both as a young kid, and then I kind of re-upped after I'd sort of done the Christianity 101 basic questions kind of stuff when I was maybe about 15 years old. And I got a lot of applause for being a good Christian young man. I had a Christian job at the Christian bookstore in the mall across from Orange Julius. And I went to a Christian high school and I got an award there for being, I guess, a good Christian or whatnot. And then I guess I felt like I'd arrived. And I've solved all the questions, obviously. I did that when I was 15. It was easy enough to figure out an eternal God and the purpose of life, and questions of life, death, and other people. So I'm good to go on that, and I'm good to go on behavior. I don't do anything bad because I didn't want to disappoint people, and I wanted to keep impressing people and getting that applause. So that's a recipe for a pretty ugly build of faith to take out of childhood and into adulthood. And sure enough, I crashed against the rocks, and the wheels did fall off. I mean, it's a terrible way to approach life. I mean, you miss out on learning and growth because you already know everything. And your quest is now to get everybody else on board with the things that 15-year-old you figured out. And so I would like to think that there were likable things about me. And I certainly had friends, patient friends. But I would also have to admit that there were some things about that build of my faith that really were very problematic. Went through a difficult time in a church setting. I used to kind of think this was everybody else's fault. Eventually, I came to see that I had a part in what went wrong there. And with no blame toward anybody, the whole thing just broke. The Bible didn't make sense anymore. The Christianity 101 answers that I had kept with me since I was 15 could no longer bear the weight of the questions I couldn't help but ask now. I'd heard new perspectives and ideas, and there's only so much you can block that stuff out. And then you endure a work crisis, relational crises. And, well, I was, I guess, about 29. Here I am finding myself with a moving van driving away from my old job at this church where stuff got weird. And my beautiful young wife and my beautiful daughter, who's only a few weeks old, my first kid, is back there in the car seat, and here I am in a U-Haul, and we're driving to nowhere. We have no plan. We have no job. I'm not going to go work at another church. I'm just lost. I started crying, like ugly crying, partly because I felt like this is the time I need to have things together for them back there, but also because I didn't want there to not be a God, but I really felt there was no God. I didn't want to not be a Christian. Of course I wanted to be a Christian. I didn't want all the stuff that the Bible promises about the point of existence and where all of this is headed to be fake. I wanted that to be real. But I mean, for all the things that I would critique myself over, one thing that I can maybe say that I got right in all this time was honesty. I didn't lie to myself about faith. I've tried to make that a habit since that point. I don't think it's a good thing to lie to yourself about. And that meant that in that moment, I didn't have a faith anymore. And this little four-wheeled metaphorical vehicle, this build that my faith had been that I'd had around since 15, everything was taken apart, not just the wheels falling off, the panels are off, everything's off. And it's spread out on this metaphorical workbench with all the parts and pieces of what used to be a cohesive faith just shot. And even on that drive in my brain, I was trying to reassemble it and make sense of things, and I just couldn't. And I kept coming to the conclusion, it's fake, and this hurts deeply. For the next, I don't even know how long, period of weeks and months, whatever, I processed this out more. And I guess I got to a place where I thought, I've got a lot in this. It would be worth my time to at least try to read the Bible again. Maybe it'll look different with all the parts taken apart and laying here on the table. And then maybe I'll understand things I didn't understand before. Maybe I just need to do that and owe it to Christianity or myself before I maybe feel the impulse to let my wife know where I'm at. So I started reading the thing again, and it was amazing how quickly, now that those presuppositions were taken apart, it was amazing how quickly this thing came back together. Very quickly, I could tell, oh, well, I had a false assumption here. My false assumption was that I'm the main character of the document, that humans are the point, but we're not. God is clearly the main character of the document. Whoa, that changes everything. It's not like that just clicked. I gotta run everything through this new set of lenses, this new matrix. How does that work? And then I read a little more, and I'm like, you know what? The plot of the Bible then can't be the improvement of people's behavior and the increased accuracy of people's thinking about God. It's got to be the story of God redeeming things that are broken and messed up, people, creation, everything. Whoa, that's a completely different religion. And what's insane is that in that moment, I was an atheist, and I think I'm still an atheist toward that fake version of God that I thought only cared about people and that was subservient to people. But I am not an atheist anymore to the idea of a God that made everything and is the first cause of everything and is the God behind the Bible itself. They're different deities. And if you play the game all the way out, it plays out in very different ways. In that moment, sitting there with everything taken apart metaphorically on the table, Christianity had broken for me, and I no longer believed that that religion worked. The funny thing is, I still no longer believe that that version of the religion works. There are problems and flaws, unsurprisingly, with my 15-year-old build, my 15-year-old prototype of a religion that purports to be a relationship, an interaction between finite people and an infinite God. It's going to be more complicated than what I can come up with as a 15-year-old. This shouldn't surprise me. But the version of Christianity that is age-old and encapsulated in the biblical text and that resonates with reason in my brain, oh, I'm not rejecting that. That to me makes a lot of sense. Maybe this is getting confusing in terms of language. Bottom line, was raised around Christianity. I was very proud in that. I had a version of it that I built when I was 15. That went for a ways into adulthood. I refused to grow, and it broke. It's not anybody else's fault. It's my own fault. But somehow, I guess I would say because of God, the thing got put back together, and it looks very, very different. This, I don't know which build I'm on, like 75.2 now, because I keep taking it apart and putting it back together because now it's just fun to work on it all the time. But certainly at this point, I would say, yeah, I'm a Christian, and I'm really glad I didn't go out and announce that to everybody because I was still very much in process on this. And there are still all kinds of times, including moments where I've worked at church and moments where I've been making videos talking about this stuff with you, where I'm like, I don't know, if I'm to be totally truthful, I got all the parts spread out here on the workbench again right now. And it's going to take a few weeks because my processor isn't fast enough to just do this in an instant. But all of this taking apart and putting back together since has happened in the context of Christian faith. And I would like to think, being honest with myself, so I don't lie to myself to just believe something to make myself feel better. This makes for a weird, clumsy, clunky, uncomfortable version of Christianity, but it feels like I'm telling myself the truth. Maybe I'm not right about everything, but I'm not intentionally lying to myself. That's what I mean. And that's what I'm striving to do moving forward. And I wish I had listened when no doubt wise people sat me down somewhere along the way as a kid and were like, hey, you're doing great in terms of where you're at right now. You're asking the questions you can ask. You're thinking through what you can think through. It's going to get weird down the road, though. You're going to ask new questions later and more questions after that. And this really is a lifelong adventure that you're going to go through of exploring the final frontier, the depths of the human soul and eternity and God and life and death and people and everything that matters. You are about to embark on this, young man. So get ready for a crazy, interesting, fascinating ride. This will be the most interesting project of your life. I'm sure people told me that, but I was too proud to listen. I'm glad eventually I at least started to internalize some of that a little further down the road. That gets me to the whole thing about testimonies. Here I stand with faith, and anti-testimonies. Now I stand over here. The whole anti-testimony fad, I get it. Yeah, there's some of that impulse is no doubt motivated by cultural pressures. It used to be very easy to be a Christian. You scored a lot of points by doing that. Now it's a little bit harder, and you don't score a lot of points by being a Christian, except in some Christian circles. So I think there's more to be gained by identifying with what right now is the easier track, and that is the be skeptical of religious claims, particularly Christian claims, particularly evangelical Christian claims. But I think it's more complex than that as to why people make anti-testimonies right now. One reason I think it happens is because, well, the same reason anybody gives a testimony for anything is to say, here I stand. I am taking the flag of myself and I am planting it right here. Yep, I'm a Christian. This is how I got here. Now you know who you're dealing with. This is what I'm about. Well, I guess it's understandable that if somebody had that flag planted there and they really wanted to say, well, that's not who I am anymore, and I want people to know who they're dealing with, now I plant my flag over here. Okay, I think that's one point of testimonies. I think another point of testimonies, both testimonies traditionally and anti-testimonies, is that we want solidarity. We want to encourage other people who've gone through a similar process. That's why you tell a testimony in church, and I think that's why people tell anti-testimonies on the internet right now. Additionally, a third reason that we tell testimonies is to persuade. If I plant my flag over here and say, I think Christianity is true and there's life in it and there's a God behind it, what I'm implicitly or explicitly saying is, and I think this would be true for you as well, and I hope you'll think about it, and I'd like to have you join me in this. That's the one place where I feel like the anti-testimonies maybe aren't totally honest. They don't usually come out and say, follow me. But come on, it's a testimony. They want you to follow them. It's not just, I feel disingenuous if I don't tell you this right now. It's not just, hey, I want other people who've experienced what I've experienced to feel solidarity. It's, look, I've laid the whole thing out. I just explained to you why Christianity makes no sense. In my deconstruction story, you'll now need to come with me over here to not faith, or I guess just be irrational. And so I'm not saying it's wrong for somebody to want to persuade you to what they think. I'm trying to persuade you. Are you kidding me? I didn't just tell you that story for my health. And I told you that story because I want to plant a flag and say, this is who I am, this is how I got there. I want to tell you that story because I think there are a whole bunch of youth group kids like me who got raised around Christianity, and some of it was weird and some of it was good. And you're trying to untangle this whole thing in your brain as an adult too. So there's a solidarity aspect, but I'm also telling you this because I want you to do the eyes wide open faith thing with me. I want company. I want other people who are willing to take it all apart and put it all back together and take it all apart and put it all back together and not get weird and freaked out that other people might see it different or that you're touching on something that's a little too sacred. It's just that there's a God behind it. We should be able to think about it. So yes, I'm trying to persuade you to do that with me. I want to make videos where we do that together. I want to kick it around together. I don't reply to all the comments or even most of them, but I read a lot of them because I want to hear what you think. And I really do care what you think about it. I care about your process in this. So yes, I'm trying to persuade. But so are the anti-testimony people. And what they want you to do is reject it. They want you to paint yourself into a corner with them and say, this is now where the things are and this is where I stand. And look, if you want to be there, they want to be there. Who am I? What kind of hypocrite would I be to say, you can't not believe? Well, what about me? I didn't believe. And I'd already gone to seminary. I mean, for crying out loud, you got to cut people some slack and acknowledge that there's some ups and downs to this. If you want to not believe, yeah, I like you. You can do that. If they want to, I like them. They can do that. But let's be upfront about what a testimony is for. It's to persuade. And I think that the offer to eyes wide open faith and not painting ourselves into some corner, I mean, I think it's a better offer. I think it's a better invitation. And so whether you are someone who would say, I lean toward there's maybe nothing and I don't actually think there's a God behind it, but I like the exercise and I like thinking, or whether you're somebody who was raised like I am and you're like, nope, I'm in, I'm pretty sure, and you're in that phase, either way or anything in between, let's process this stuff together. And to those who are in a place where they've done their processing, they don't want to do any more, and they're ready to plant that flag in the ground and say, I'm done and I'm out and I want you to come with me. Grace and peace to you as well, my friends. But I am not done and I am not out, and I want to continue down this road some more, and I would love it if you would hang out with me while I do it. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour. Let's do this again soon.